down and hell. The heathen, so are peoples outside the church, in heaven. 3. 325. The choir at a distance was heard one morning. From the choir's representations I was permitted to know that they were Chinese, for they exhibited the kind of woolly goat, then a cake of millet, and an ebony spoon, also the idea of a floating city. They desired to come nearer to me, and when they had joined me they said that they wished to be alone with me, that they might disclose their thoughts. But they were told that they were not alone, and that some were displeased at their wishing to be alone, although they were guests. Then they perceived this displeasure. They began to think whether they had transgressed against the neighbor, and whether they had claimed anything to themselves that belonged to others. All thought in the other life being communicated, I was permitted to perceive the agitation of their minds. It consisted of the recognition that possibly they had injured those who were displeased, of shame on that account, together with other worthy affections, and it was thus known that they were endowed with charity. Soon after, I spoke with them, and at last about the Lord. When I called him Christ I perceived a certain repugnance in them, but the reason was disclosed, namely, that they had brought this from the world, from their having learned that Christians lived worse lives than they did, and without charity. But when I called him simply Lord they were interiorly moved. Afterwards, they were taught by the angels that the Christian doctrine beyond every other in the world prescribes love and charity, but that there are few who live in accordance with it. There are Gentiles who have come to know while they live in the world, both from intercourse and report, that Christians lead evil lives, are addicted to adultery, hatred, quarreling, drunkenness, and the like, which they themselves abhor because such things are contrary to their religious beliefs. These in the other life are more timid than others about accepting the truths of faith, but they are taught by the angels that the Christian doctrine, as well as the faith itself, teaches a very different life, but that the lives of Christians are less in accord with their doctrine than the lives of Gentiles. When they recognize this they receive the truths of faith, and adore the Lord, but less readily than others. 326. It is a common thing for Gentiles who have worshipped any god under an image or statue, for any graven thing, to be introduced, when they come into the other life, to certain spirits in place of their gods or idols, in order that they may rid themselves of their fantasies. When they have been with these for some days, the fantasies are put away. Also those who have worshipped men are sometimes introduced to the men they have worshipped, or to others in their place, as many of the Jews to Abraham, Jacob, Moses, and David. But when they come to see that they are human the same as others, and that they can give them no help, they become ashamed, and are carried to their own places in accordance with their lives. Among the Gentiles in heaven the Africans are most beloved, for they receive the goods and truths of heaven more readily than others. They especially wish to be called obedient, but not faithful. They say that Christians, because they possess the doctrine of faith, may be called faithful, but not they, unless they accept that doctrine, or, as they say, have the ability to accept it. 327. I have talked with some who were in the ancient church. That is called the ancient church, which was after the deluge, and extended through many kingdoms, namely, Assyria, Mesopotamia, Syria, Ethiopia, Arabia, Lydia, Egypt, Philistia as far as Tyre and Sidon, and through the land of Canaan on both sides of the Jordan. The men of this church knew about the Lord that he was to come, and were imbued with the goods of faith, and yet they fell away and became idolaters. These spirits were in front towards the left, in a dark place and in a miserable state. Their speech was like the sound of a pipe of one tone, almost without rational thought. They said they had been there for many centuries, and that they are sometimes taken out that they may serve others for certain uses of a low order. From them I was led to think about many Christians who are inwardly though not outwardly idolaters, since they are worshippers of self and of the world, and in heart deny the Lord. What kind of love awaits them in the other life? The first and most ancient church on this earth was that which is described in the first chapters of Genesis, and church above all others was celestial. What the celestial are in heaven. There were various churches after the flood which are called ancient churches. The ancient churches were representative churches. In the ancient church there was a word, but it has been lost. The character of the ancient church when it began to decline. The difference between the most ancient church and the ancient church. The statutes, the judgments, and the laws, which were commanded in the Jewish church, were in part like those in the ancient church. The God of the most ancient church and of the ancient church was the Lord, and he was called Jehovah. 328. That the church of the Lord is spread over all the globe, and is thus universal, and that all those are in it who have lived in the good of charity in accordance with their religious belief, and that the church, where the word is, and by means of it, the Lord is known, is in relation to those who are outside the church, like the heart and lungs in man, from which all the viscera and members of the body have their life, variously according to their forms, positions, and conjunctions. Next, I will read Little Children in Heaven. 1. Thank you.